You've reached the Signal Watch, movies, television, comics, and more. I'm your host, Ryan Steens. Join me and our cadre of co-contributors as we examine cultural artifacts of the 20th century, boldly explore the 21st, and try to put it all in perspective. Stay tuned. We're gonna try to make this work.
Today, you will all complete the exercise precisely on time. You'll arrive at your first marker in exactly 4.5 minutes from now. The second marker 30 seconds later. 3, 2, 1, go!
Hey everybody, and welcome to, I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to release this month or in January.
New Year. Happy New Year.
Yeah, well, Happy New Year in any case.
December.
Simon gave me, I'm here with Simon. Say hi, Simon.
Hello, Simon.
Thank you.
I gave you the best gift ever. I bought you more film.
Right. So a while back, we talked about doing this movie, and I think then COVID happened. And we just never got back around to actually doing it. And
we could call it a canon film if we still are doing canon films.
So yeah, this is actually a good transition. We're just going to do canon films from now on.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think that's just how this podcast is going to roll.
Yeah. Just favorite films, basically. Favorite films, I guess.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to talk about them if we're not both like, yeah, we watched a movie that we have no opinion about.
It's very true.
It was not at all what I thought it was going to be. Let me just start.
Right, so before we start, okay. I was watching this last night, and I'm obviously watching this through very thick nostalgia goggles. Because I first watched this when I was probably under 10 years old, and I love it. And I was like, I honestly think this discussion tomorrow could go two ways. Ryan could go, what the hell did you make me watch? Or he could go, that was great. I loved it.
So it's not a what the hell did you make me watch movie at all. Let me start. We have to do a quick recap. So this movie has two titles.
More than that, actually.
Okay.
It was also known as Assault Force when it was shown on US TV. England has had it as North Sea Hijack because we're obviously next to the North Sea where we fish. And the rest of the world, I guess the advertising men went, nobody knows where the North Sea is. So we'll make it a lot less confusing by calling it Folks, which you wouldn't know what that means until you've seen the film. So why are you going to go and see the film if you don't know what the title means until you've seen the film?
I assumed it was the opposite. I assumed it was called Folks in the UK, and then like when they distributed it to the US, they were like, no one's going to know what this is. Let's call it North Sea Hijack. No,
it's the other way. I've literally got a DVD next to me here from England with North Sea Hijack on it. And actually yesterday, watching my spanking new Blu-ray from is it Kino Lobo? I was like, it was a bit of a shock when Folks popped up at the start because I went, they pasted that in for the Americans.
Wow. Yeah, no, we do know what the North Sea is.
Obviously the person who works at Universal didn't.
And so anyway, it starts with this. Roger Moore is the star, and he plays. I can't figure out what his day job is, and he seems to be some
counter-terrorist expert.
Yeah, and but he's a privateer almost.
Got a tiny island.
Yeah,
a tiny castle.
Yeah, and near Scotland. I assume it's off the coast of Scotland.
I think Roger Moore is trying to do a Scottish accent. There's some very, very strange accents in there. There's a lot of Swedish chefs going on later on.
Yes.
But yeah, I think Roger Moore's supposed to be Scottish.
But he's also some sort of insane genius, which is kind of really the selling point of the movie in a lot of ways.
Well, he's very eccentric.
Yes. And he is hired to protect the oil platforms that are in the North Sea. And this is where I got excited because, and I'll get into it in a little bit, but my dad worked in the petroleum industry while I was growing up, and I had posters of oil platforms on my wall when I was in like middle school. So I thought they were very cool.
If you were English, you could have drawn tiny Roger Moores on them climbing up the list.
So he basically spends 5 months thinking about how to protect an oil platform.
It's very good timing. Very good timing that he started practicing that.
And pretty much right after he finishes doing his planning, Anthony Perkins and crew all decide that they're actually going to take an oil platform. And then it becomes the North Sea hijack / heist. And they're going to blow it up if someone doesn't give them an ungodly amount of money. I didn't bother figuring out what it was, but I did figure out very quickly it was an insane amount of money.
Yeah. But like Anthony Perkins said, it's actually a drop in it's a drop in the ocean compared to how much revenue they'd lose, even daily. So I'm like, actually, I can see what the Prime Minister thinks about giving them money. It's not that much, really.
That's true.
Says, everybody in a rowboat will have a go if you do. So,
yeah, it. I think had I seen this when I was 12, I would have lost my mind watching this. I would have absolutely. I like it as a 46-year-old. Had I seen this when I was 12, I would have watched this. Oh, I totally get it. I would have been watching this over and over and over.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it's also bit of backgrounds. This is based on a book called Esther, Ruth, and Jennifer by Jack Davis. Well, I think he also did the screenplay. It's directed. It came out in 1980 and directed by Andrew V. McLaglen. I think I'm saying that right. Now, he's great because around 1980, he did 3 movies with Roger Moore. They obviously enjoyed working together. This was the middle one. The first one was The Wild Geese, which, I'm a big fan of. And then the third one was The Sea Wolves, which again is like a wartime set action movie. And, Roger Moore not really straying that far from his wheelhouse, but he did actually say he took this, but both him and Anthony Perkins, that rings a little less true to me. Both said they took these roles to try to break typecasting. And I can definitely see that in Roger Moore's kind of case. I feel like it's funny. I opened my Blu-ray case though, and there's a cheesy poster, I'm guessing from America, where it's Roger Moore, a huge Roger Moore, King Kong style, astride an oil rig. And there's girls, scantily clad girls, clinging to his legs. And I'm like, none of those people in the film. So even though he was trying to get away from Bond, I guess he was following him.
Yeah, I can see them marketing it that way. It's interesting to think of Anthony Perkins trying to break typecasting. I actually, while watching this, thought he's really lucky on the other side of this. Everyone didn't decide he was a villain now in this mold.
Well, yeah, because he is still playing a villain, although I guess he's maybe trying to move away from horror. Because a couple of years after this, he finally gave up and went, I will play Norman Bates again. So I think at this point he was still kind of doing a Leonard Nimoy and just mad that everybody kept saying, "You're Norman Bates" all the time.
Yeah, I mean he Americans always cast. So it's interesting too to watch a movie like Die Hard. Of course, has all the like Europeans coming in, and the Americans have to fight them off. This crew that's the bad guys in this are all. I'd say about 80% American and then 20% Japanese.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've written down in my notes dodgy English Die Hard, this is about as close to us doing a Die Hard as we ever got. Which, because if you try to do an English action film, I think you very quickly either fall into doing a gangster film with action or war movie, normally Second World War, or just kind of parodying it, which they did so in Hot Fuzz, where they were like, what would happen if you kind of like had Lethal Weapon or Die Hard happened in a small English village, and then they kind of do it.
Yeah.
So this is the only time really they tried to kind of seriously copy a kind of the American template. And I think they did a pretty good job. I think it works pretty well. It's more talky than action, but I think it's good talk.
Well, that's the thing is it's I don't know if thriller is the right word, but as a book, it's a page turner. It moves along. It's a lean 90 something minutes. I want to say like 92 minutes or something like that.
There's no real waste of scenes, I don't think.
No, I mean, whatever the source material in the book was, they clearly figured out exactly what they needed. Exactly who all the characters are, so like we mentioned, Perkins is kind of the mastermind bad guy, and I don't want to say he's like Alan Rickman at all, but he is a cerebral, like, I have planned all of this to the nth degree, so there's nothing you can throw at me except for the fact he has no idea that ffolkes is out there who's already been thinking about all of this for 6 months.
Well, interestingly as well, like last night watching it, Perkins almost has the same monologue that Rickman has, where he's like, we're not terrorists. They're disorganized. We're here for the money. We know exactly what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah, it kind of
having watched Die Hard pretty recently.
Yeah, it made me wonder if the guys who watched Die Hard hadn't seen this movie and were like, well, that's the clever thing is to, I mean, I know Die Hard also came from a book too, but
yeah,
I have to think the guys who did Die Hard had seen this at least once.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of similarities. I mean, the gang itself, Perkins' gang, they're not so much Die Hardish, because Die Hardish is more like, obviously muscles and mullets, but it's like, but these guys are very like, well differentiated. You got Michael Parks in there, who I realized last night, hang on, that's Michael Parks. That's like Tarantino's favorite years later, with his crazy magnifying glasses on. And you've got like, an Irish guy, the two Japanese guys, and then it's a little bit similar vibe to the Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3 as well. With all the guys kind of wearing the similar outfits,
Yeah, there's a scene, a couple of scenes where they show Ffolkes isn't just the only guy. He has a squad that he runs around with. And Jamie turned to me and said, it's like Crazy Life Aquatic, as Roger Moore is standing there in his stocking cap, surrounded by people in wetsuits, and he's totally... Yeah, he's
Waldo.
Yeah, and he's totally like dressing them down as you got to be doing this exactly this time frame, and I was like, it is like Crazy Steve Zissou. This is really interesting, but
yeah. Well, it's also like hilarious at the start. The opening scene is him throwing grenades in the water so they swim faster. And
that's what I kind of fell in love with the movie.
It's basically like, yeah, you're not allowed to do that anymore, Rog. It's like their health and safety will shut you down too fast. But no, yeah, I mean, it is, and it's tongue in cheek, but it is a straight arrow as well. It plays it to the hill. It doesn't kind of like wink at the audience. I mean, I love just the things like him saying to James Mason, you have to drop these cigarettes at exactly 8:40 so that I can shoot him through the window. And it's like, it's just so good.
Yeah, because Ffolkes as a character is so insane, everything else has to be super grounded in this.
And James Mason's really good at doing that, I think.
Yeah. It's bizarre to see him kind of at this point in his career, because I'm just not that used to seeing kind of like just before retirement James Mason.
Yeah.
And like the minute he started talking, like I was looking at all the faces as they're going around the room as the prime minister, who's like a huggy Thatcher, kind of
Yeah.
like
But she's almost like Janet Brown from the end of For Your Eyes Only, but played straight. Just like Mr. Bond, you know.
but she but anyway, yeah, they're going around the table or around the room of like, what do you think? And James Mason starts talking, and you're like, whoa, that is such a James Mason voice coming out of James Mason.
James Mason.
But you know, he's really good, but it's also weird to see him at this point. And he's basically playing third banana in the movie.
Oh yeah, and he did this a lot at this time because I remember him popping up in Salem's a lot and Boys from Brazil, and he'd just have like juicy little cameos, really, which I'm sure paid the bills very well, and he didn't have to work too much.
Yeah, and in this, I mean, they're not asking him to run around. He's kind of the staunch admiral who's going to work things through with this folks guy who he trusts. It is funny because you're watching folks be completely insane on screen, and then he's like, but he's the man for the job, and you're like, well, I guess we buy it because James Mason said it. So.
I think also you kind of get the feeling he's the only man available, really. It's like they haven't got any other options. So, but yeah, his character, it's funny because nowadays audiences are kind of primed, especially younger audiences, to get offended by anything. Whereas I feel like even back then, it was kind of played for laughs, and both men and women got the joke that he is a total misogynist, and he kind of does at least explain why he is.
I mean, the explanation is nonsense, but yes.
But there's like his whiskey bottle, which is kind of funny. I love where he goes, have I packed everything? No, I bloody haven't. Grabbed his whiskey bottle.
Yeah. He you never see him consume water during the course of the film, but you do see him walk around with a full fifth of whiskey in his hand.
Pissed the entire film.
Yeah. If you haven't seen it, to give you an idea, he has this kind of crazy like Scottish Lord beard, Roger Moore. He wearing
tweeds all the time.
Yeah, he's got cats everywhere around him in his castle. And he lives in a castle where he's throwing grenades at his employees who are all wearing matching wetsuits. And whenever he stops to think, he basically does this thing, which is very believable, where he pulls out basically a cross stitch, and he starts doing a cross stitch of a cat because he wants to think about nothing. His mind's going blank so he can think about the mission at hand.
Yeah.
But it's annoying to everyone else because here's the guy we're throwing money at to save the day, and he's just sat down with a kitty cross stitch while he's drinking scotch.
Yeah.
And kind of ignoring everybody. And if a woman comes anywhere near him, he's like snarling at them.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I love that the end is fantastic suspense, I think. And you got the ticking clock all the way through, which, screenwriting 101.
Mm.
But I love the fact that he has to shoot the flare to stop the bomb being dropped if it gets to a certain time. And it's just like, I love it. I love it. I mean, like I said, I was kind of brought up with it. So I think it's, it's infused into me a little bit.
Well, they do a lot of really clever things. And this is, again, where I think maybe Die Hard saw this, but they understand kind of the value of a good explosion in this. But the whole plot that the the hijackers have is there's, of course, service boats that go out to the oil platforms. Yeah. And there's a service platform, and then there's the main platform. And
I guess they're supposed to be Norwegian, I guess.
So yeah, the Norwegians and are kind of famous for building these oil platforms that are like, we have platforms in the Gulf. The Gulf of Mexico here. Sorry, I live in Texas. We say the Gulf just as, and those platforms are a certain size. The ones that they make in Northern Europe for some reason are insane. They're like the biggest facilities they go down way, way, way down into the North Sea, but then they'll also be like 10 stories tall on the top. And I don't know what's going on in there. It's all crazy engineering, but people also live out there like all winter because they have to constantly be working.
It's supposed to be amazing money, but like quite a pretty rough lifestyle. You have to be pretty hard to be able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be able to say, I'm going to live basically in a horrendous environment inside of a metal building 6 months of the year. And that's kind of where the whole idea of the abyss came from. The abyss was like, let's quit having these on the surface. Let's drop them to the seafloor. So there's the one called the Troll, and that might still be in operation. That was out of Norway. That was literally one of the biggest things ever built by humans. And I totally suggest Googling it, YouTubing it. And it's an absolutely phenomenal piece of engineering. So they cut to the first shot of Jennifer, which is, so the reason it's called Esther, Ruth, and Jennifer is Esther is the boat, Ruth is the service platform, and then Jennifer is the troll-like giant platform where and they do explain look, if the terrorists blow this thing up, it's going to be an environmental catastrophe, which, I'm glad they brought that up. Because it'd be very much like what they're talking basically about what happened in the Gulf here around 2009. Where, the oil would just have been spilling. They even bring up the name of Red Adair, who was a real guy who was actually from Houston, who at the end of the Gulf War, when the Gulf War in Kuwait, when they were blowing up as the Iraqis were leaving Kuwait, and they were just setting the oil fields on fire. Yeah. Initially, the news reports were like, it's going to be 10 years before they can put all these fires out. Red Adair and his crew showed up and capped everything within a few months. They're just amazing wildcatters, and that's what they're talking about. And if you're not familiar with the energy industry, like, you absolutely need these guys, because when something goes wrong, I mean, like it did in the Gulf here, there was just nothing to be done. It's really hard to send people down and take care of something like that. But it was interesting to hear them throw this very real name of, I've never met Red Adair, but he lived basically right near me in high school. I remember watching the John Wayne movie about Red Adair when I was about the same age. I probably saw North Sea Hijack. So people in England were aware of him, Okay.
Yeah, we were like we're very like, I guess in a way more than America, because America, you have kind of like little hotspots of people who are Anglophiles, whereas, most people just wouldn't get a lot of references. Whereas in England, I guess, because we have so much media from America. I mean, even when I was growing up, we had Starsky and Hutch and original Star Trek and all that kind of stuff. And, all kinds of stuff, Buck Rogers, that, we just like, we do have an awareness of America, I think, through a lot of that stuff.
Oh, that's really, and I know that to be true. Red Adair is such a specific individual. That's shocking. I'd forgotten about that film. So
yeah, bad film, I think. But
I knew him because he was a guy who was like in the industry that everyone talked about in Houston when I was in high school. So, but yeah, but then they, if they blow up this platform, as you said, like, it's going to just knock out the British economy for months. It's going to be a huge blow. So it's a fascinating thing that they're that they kind of plot.
And there's 640 people on there as well, I think, on the big platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard. It's like they do this pull away shot that's at the very beginning.
Work, by the way, great model work for all of this, because those are all little models, but they look really good, I think.
Well, I mean, there is a real platform they show at the very, very beginning, and Jamie said, "Is that a model?" And I said, "No, I don't think so. I think that's actually a real platform." So you do see a guy walking on it, but everything after that then was a model, because it's not hard to make a model at night of an oil platform. But you're right. It was really, really good model work. that they did for all the boats and the two platforms. I wasn't clear. They didn't actually blow up Ruth, right? They actually just set off.
No. So he told James Mason, Roger Moore said to James Mason, make a huge explosion after sunset, and that'll stop him pressing the button, when he was, originally stop him pressing the button when he was going to at 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And then James Mason was like, well, what if he presses it anyway? And he goes, well, that's something we've got to deal with. That's just, we've got to hope he doesn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So they set off the explosion. And that's when everybody went, oh my God. And then later on, I think Anthony Perkins was about to go, I would have done this at 9 o'clock if it hadn't have already happened. And then they phoned him up. So stopped him it's funny because he stopped his finger before the phone went. So I was like, from an acting point of view, that was a bit rubbish, but it was still good.
Yeah. I mean, it's got this really clever setup and kind of these two guys playing chess with each other. Of both of them have thought about every step that they're going to do. You kind of know that Ffolkes is going to be the upper hand, and through the whole thing, and because he gets to be the weirdo, or Perkins has to be the less weirdo guy.
There's some good tantrums though. There's some good hill shouts.
Yeah,
and I do love his "I don't like your face," and he has a great final line as well. I love the final "he's not quite dead yet" scene.
Yeah. Stuck with the harpoon. He's still got to get the last word in.
Swiveling his chair slowly.
They also are. The movie doesn't have. Well, how do I say this? It. I think I would have been fine with this totally when I was 12 because it's mostly bloodless violence, right?
Yeah.
But it's still kind of like the villains are still villainous. Like they
do kill a couple of people. And one of them quite nastily with the poison.
Yeah, the whole poison thing was a really interesting thing to watch kind of play out and to eat up time kind of on screen, but also drive the plot. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all.
Well, it's so interestingly, I was going to come in it from the other way in the two faults. I love this movie, obviously, we'll always love this movie. But the two script faults I had with it was shooting Terry, who's one of the hijackers, because Terry kind of gets them on board and then I guess gets seasick. But then we're never sure whether he's changed sides or whether he's kind of like for the rest of the crew. And then the poisoning is like, again, a bit of a confusing scene because he says he'll help the crew and he sets off and then the crew go, hang on, what if he was lying? So then they chase him and kind of grab him and tie him up. And then Perkins has actually kind of been looking through a door anyway, so he knows what's going on. So he kind of confronts them and makes them drink the poison. Except Sana, the young girl, manages to get away. So the guy gets forced to drink the poison coffee and he dies and gets thrown overboard. But then they go back and untie Terry in a cupboard. And he's like, I was coming to tell you. And Perkins is like, Terry, I'm starting to worry about you. And then later on, there's a weird scene where he goes like, he's like, can I go? Can I go? I don't even want any money. And like Anthony Perkins goes, of course you can, Terry. And then I guess he sees the Irish guy grinning at him. So he kind of gets scared and runs off and hides. And Perkins is like, no, get on the net. You're okay. So he gets on the net, but then they shoot him. And I'm like, it's kind of confusing script writing a little bit. I mean, I guess they're playing with him.
Yeah.
In a kind of evil time. Those are the two scenes that I always have a little bit of trouble with because I'm like, I guess because it never definitely says, and maybe that's a good thing these days, it never definitely says whether he's with them or against them. So, yeah. So, they're the only two kind of issues I have with it. But I think, all the subplots about, the potential rapist as one of the kind of, and they said Hopkins, Perkins gang, and, and the poisoning subplot. It's all kind of good stuff. It's kind of like filler to a certain extent, but it all kind of works really.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like you've got these, you can only have realistically, you're filling whatever it was, like 12 hours of time or something like that. And it was maybe 24 hours. I don't remember exactly, but they do have to have things happen. Otherwise, it's just people sitting there looking anxious,
waiting for the money.
Right. So I did like the poison plot. I did get the thing with Terry of course, the villains, because that's just what happens in movies. The villains always tell their chicken counterpart that, okay, yeah, of course you can go off. Of course, I'm going to shoot you in the back.
So the Bond villain going, you can drop out of my scheme for world domination.
Right. Let me drop you out of the blimp.
You had to drop out.
But yeah, it's I didn't. The thing with Terry didn't bother me at all. I kind of knew Terry had it coming the minute he started saying like, "You can have my money," and Anthony Perkins is just smiling and nodding at him like, "Yeah, of course, go ahead. Like, of course you can walk out of this alive with no harm, no foul." But yeah, the girl who played Sana.
Leah Brody, who I looked up because she's lovely, and I thought she was really good in the film as well, like acting wise. The only other thing I guess I've seen her in is she was in Warlords of Atlantis with Doug McClure, which was one of those great around 1980. We're going to find a lost world and get taken back to prehistoric times and get chased around for a while, and then manage to get back to the modern world, which normally was like Victorian kind of society,
right?
And she was comely cave girl in that, I think.
She totally reminded me of a French actress whose name now totally escapes me, and I'm trying to look it up.
I think fast. I know.
I'm having no luck.
I think who you mean, because especially with the short hair.
Yes. Leslie Caron. I knew it wasn't her because she would have been a little older than this at this point. I mean, Leslie Caron, that American in Paris was 1951 or something like that, and North Sea Hijacks 30 years later. But
she also looks similar to Jacqueline Pierce, who was a Hammer favorite, of course. In the Reptile, she was the Reptile in the Reptile.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
But you also got Roger Moore's best mate, David Hedison, in here as King.
Right. It was driving me crazy. I was like, is that who I think it is? And so 20 minutes into the movie, I was like, yeah, okay, it's Felix. Yeah.
Yeah. From Live and Let Die and License to Kill. You're George Baker as another kind of admiral who I think talks to the Prime Minister. And he's like been on loads of British TV, but he was nearly James Bond in the 60s as well. And Jack Watson plays the Norwegian captain of the ship. So he plays the Sergeant Major in The Wild Geese. And
I knew I recognized that guy. All right.
Yeah, and he's got probably the dodgiest accent in North Sea Hijack because he's trying to do Norwegian and he's talking like this all the time.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, kind of great cast. Fantastic music by Michael J. Lewis, who also did the music to Theatre of Blood. But he does a real rousing, pompous British, march, I guess, for this. I guess that would be folk's theme. But yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. Whenever, I'm kind of glad I watched it so we could do this because I feel like I haven't done it a couple of Christmases, and for me it's as Christmas as sitting there with a tangerine and a bowl of nuts, really.
So you just lost all the Americans.
Sitting there with my slice of pumpkin pie. And,
there you go.
But yeah, very boy's own. I don't know if I guess that term's gone now, but this was, up until maybe the 1990s, we had this term in England, which was boy's own adventures, which, I guess James Bond was kind of boy's own, but that kind of straddled the mainstream. But boy's own are very much like Biggles or, anything kind of, I guess, male-based, where, young boys would, I guess, watch movies of, men basically fighting each other.
Yeah, I was familiar with the term, basically because I read so many British comic authors in the 90s, and I definitely understood it as being like basically pulp for young men or young boys.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And yeah,
definitely.
totally. I can see that. I mean, the toughest thing about it is really that folks' misogyny is played as a joke. Like it's so
Yeah,
absurd, and then his reason for it is so absurd
yeah.
that, like, now of course everyone would lose their mind and not even get to the point of realizing, no, this is actually supposed to be absurd.
And I
um
think I think that's sadly a backward step we've made, because I'm like, in 1980, I'm sure men and women watched this and just laughed at him because he was so out there.
well,
Whereas,
sure, because they're showing highly competent women all around him. They're showing the prime
yeah,
minister. They're showing, I think her name is Sarah, who's on the rig.
or the secretary, yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
also, like, he does have an arc. I think to both women, he kind of goes, oh, I'm very surprised, but I owe you a debt, and so does the country.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually realizes that he was kind of wrong.
Yeah.
I do love when he's
He
got Sana.
refuses to recognize that Sana, who is very clearly a woman, is a
She does
woman.
have quite prominent breasts, and I love it when he puts her in the shower, and then he rubs her for a good like couple of minutes before he turns around and goes, "You're not a boy."
But it's just because she's taken action, he keeps insisting she must be a boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly played for a goof, and it is harder now for, I think it would be for younger people to understand what the joke is, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's clearly intended of, well, he's just an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't like
Yeah.
anybody but cats, which is why the ending is just golden.
And to be fair, he's kind of not just an asshole to women; he's kind of an asshole to everybody.
Yeah, he's definitely an equal opportunity asshole. Yes.
Yeah. Like,
But
I think that other admiral goes, you've trained these guys so well they could move around this boat with their eyes closed. And he goes, if they did that with their eyes closed, I'd poke their eyes out. So he can't really take a compliment very well.
well,
Which
I mean,
would lead to the end scene, which
right.
is very nice tie up, I think.
Yeah, he won't accept a medal because that's silly. Why would you want a medal? But they give him a box of kittens and he's just absolutely delighted.
Kind of makes his day. Put it with the other 60 cats that he's got.
In a way, had they made, three more of these with Folks as the hero, and I don't know if that was ever the intention or not. I think we would have an idea culturally of like what this was and why the character is absurd, and kind of in the way Sherlock Holmes is an asshole to everybody, right?
Or James Bond.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess I was going Bond. I don't always feel is 10 steps ahead of everybody in quite the same way, and so he's kind of just exhausted with everybody else.
Yeah.
The way Sherlock Holmes is always like, well, it's elementary. It's, of course this is how this, when Watson, who is a doctor, can't put it together.
Well, it's also interesting how the modern interpretation of Holmes is almost like a bit autistic these days, where, if you watch like even Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch, he's supposed to have no social skills. He never turns up to dates that he's supposed to be at. And he's like, no, I've got far more important things to do. So, why would you put up with somebody like that? Well, you'd put up with them because they're a genius,
Yeah.
And, they do have a good heart. They just can't really express it very well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's easy for me to kind of lay the Peter Cushing template over that, or Basil Rathbone of like, well, they're just, arrogant but it's also because they are so detached from, they just don't operate like the rest of people. And if they did, they wouldn't be Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that Folks is from that same cloth.
Yeah.
But we only got the one movie, and it's kind of been lost to some extent. It's certainly not something people ever here watch. I don't remember North Sea Hijack being, if it was on the shelf at the video rental store. I don't remember it, and I think something having Roger Moore on the cover, that would have been enough for me to grab it back then. But maybe with the beard, I just didn't recognize him. I can't say.
Yeah, I would guess that I think it probably did okay in England, but it definitely flopped and it did nothing in America. And I can kind of see why, because I mean Roger Moore's got a quote that says the film's had so many title changes, I've lost count, but
Mhm.
everybody at least seems to like my character in it. Which is kind of like, I think half the trouble was they kept trying to rebrand this and it wasn't working. It was actually making it worse, if anything.
Mhm.
Um, and it is incredibly English, I mean, how many Americans, how many middle Americans know where the North Sea is or care about oil rigs or really, I don't think they'd probably be busy watching Burt Reynolds. They wouldn't really have time for this or maybe even understand the dialogue.
Yeah, in 1980, I think that definitely was a possibility. I think it moves. Frankly, it feels the way it's shot and the pacing. It feels like an American movie.
Yeah.
So I
It
don't
didn't
think
feel,
that would have been the problem, but I think maybe the other things you brought up may have been.
yeah, yeah. And and it's nice seeing Roger Moore because Roger Moore was incredibly self-depreciating. We've talked about this before in
Mhm.
Bond podcasts, but he was very self-depreciating about his own abilities. His big joke was, when I act, it's right eyebrow up, waggle, left eyebrow up, waggle, and that normally does the trick. But given a chance, he can act. Um, I think he was more of a star than an actor. So a bit like Sean Connery, he'd do what worked really well, and he'd make it look effortless. Um, but at the same time, he did another film called The Man Who Haunted Himself at the start of the 70s, where, if you watch that, he's definitely doing some great acting in that. And I think in this, even though it's a caricature, he's definitely having fun and, and stretching out of his comfort zone a bit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not James Bond.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he's creating another larger than life character that no one's ever seen before, and that's a really tough thing to do. And that's again why I think it's unfortunate there wasn't a folks 2, 3, and 4
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
where they easily could have been.
Yeah, definitely. And it would have been interesting seeing the character maybe grow or maybe even having to work with a woman the whole film.
Oh
You know,
yeah, yeah. They definitely would
bring
have headed that way.
bring in a kind of woman admiral that he has to
Mhm.
like answer to or something. That would have been great. A bit like the Bond films slowly evolved as well. Where they're kind of like their female roles. I think it would have been good. Um, but sadly, like you say, wasn't to be. But at least we have this.
Yeah. Yeah. If you've not seen it, it's really hard to get right now on streaming. I had a brief moment of panic. I thought that I had accidentally put the DVD into a cabinet that my Christmas tree is currently sitting on. And I was like, I can't get to it. I'm gonna have to call Simon and tell him we're off for the recording. And then I realized, no, it was actually in another cabinet where I could easily get to it. But in between that, I spent 30 minutes looking for it online, and it's just right now not anywhere. Everyone knows if you Google North Sea Hijack, it's very clear that it has been streaming in the past at different services. Why it's not now? Seawolves is streaming,
Yeah.
and definitely Wild Geese are streaming, but for whatever reason right now, probably because Kino Lorber might have the rights and they just put out that
Yeah.
DVD. Um,
It could be a
so give it another few months and it'll show up again.
yeah. Yeah, totally. Well, yeah, yeah. Hopefully, we can maybe we can do the wild geese or seawolves next time. I know we've got a few ideas of things coming up. And like you said, we're just going to do, I guess, favorite movies from now on.
Yeah,
Um,
except now that you say the Wild Geese, I kind of want to do that and Wild Geese 2 because you have said it. Wild Geese 2 does not hold up at all.
Wild Geese 2 is a very, very bad film.
And I want to see how that happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically got a much more interesting production background than the film that came out of it. It's just kind of like a sad, comedy of errors really that destroyed that film. But yeah, we can definitely. I mean, I'll probably be able to watch it at least once.
Right. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for bringing the movie to me and to my attention. Interesting to hear it's a Christmas movie of sorts. But yeah, this was a total kick. I really enjoyed it.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Esther, Ruth, and Jennifer, with the grateful thanks of the nation.
Very thoughtful. Much appreciated.
Well, if you'll excuse me, Mrs. Prime Minister, I think they'd like a saucer of milk.
That about wraps it up for this edition of The Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. Thanks for sticking with us. If you enjoyed the podcast, we invite you to drop on by the Signal Watch blog, where you'll find write-ups of a wide variety of movies and more. We'd love to hear from you, so find us online and let us know what you think. Whether you prefer email, blog comments, or social media, we'll be happy to hear from you. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high-quality content. So, until next time, God damn it, babies, you've got to be kind.